Assalamu alaikum and very good morning, grade 7. We will proceed to our next topic, and that topic is pollination. But before that, we will do labeling, and I have played a game for you. So, receptacle, then leaf, then I should play sepal. Oh, yes, it's correct. Okay, now I'm going to add petals. Where are petals? They're red color. No. Yes, that's done. Now I should go for the female reproductive part. Stigma is the top. Then style is the neck of the carpel. Then the swollen base is the ovary. Ovary has many ovules. Where's ovule? Yes. That goes fit perfectly. Now I will label the male part, reproductive part of a flower. Anther is the yellow sac with pollen grains, and filament is the stalk of anther. That's it. Okay. Now you have to learn this diagram by your heart. Okay. Pollination. The topic is pollination. To make seeds, a flower must be pollinated. What is pollination? The transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma. Okay? It is done by two types, and their types are called self-pollination or cross-pollination. But before that, I'm going to tell you what are the agents. Pollination is done by many agents. One of them is insects. Insect pollinated flowers are mostly brightly colored and scented. They have nectars like this geranium flower that allows many insects to visit it. These insects may be butterfly, these insects may be the small mason bees or etc. We say flowers are very beautiful, but they are genius too. Some flowers are constructed so that when an insect lands on them, the weight of the insect's body makes the stamen jog down, covering the insect's back with pollens. This will help the pollination a lot. One interesting case is this flower that ripens and looks like a bumblebee. The flower looks like a female bumblebee. When a male bumblebee sees the flower, he tries to come along and get trapped and gets more of the pollens of the flower and transfer them to the other flowers. So, isn't it a great tactic, a clever one? Now we will study about the wind pollinated flowers. So the flowers that are not looking so beautiful, they are mostly pollinated by wind, and these flowers are grasses, many large trees. They don't have brightly colored petals or nectar. They don't have even the scent. The pollen of the wind pollinated flower is very light and it blows easily. Why do you think so? Because they should be blown off easily by the wind. That's why they are very light and they are produced in large amount. These flowers' stigma are feathery and they catch easily these light pollen grains, and this also helps in pollination. Here is the table of insect pollinated flowers and wind pollinated flowers. The differences are clearly told. Here, stigma like sticky in insect pollinated flowers so that it can catch the pollen of insects, and the wind pollinated flower stigma is feathery so it can catch all the blown away wind passing pollens to it. Now comes the flowers which are pollinated by birds. This hummingbird looking lovely. It's sucking the nectar, and meanwhile it is also doing the pollination. It is transferring the pollen grains from anthers to the stigma. Isn't it lovely? One more strange thing is for you. Pollination is also done by bats. Can you see this bat? It's from Nat Geo Wild Movies. And this bat is doing what? It is coming to the flowers and it is pollinating them. Because bat pollinated flowers are often large and bell-shaped, white or pale colored, and they open their petals at night These flowers usually produce large amounts of nectar and give off a smell that attracts the bats. The pollen sticks to the fur of the bats' faces and bodies, as well as feeding on the pollen, nectar, and other parts of the flower. The bats often transfer these pollens to other flowers. Bats get insects to eat too. Okay, students, now get ready for your written task. Take out your journals. Write question number 3. Insect pollinated flowers produce fewer and larger pollen grains than wind pollinated flowers. Explain why this is so. So, the answer is insect pollinated flowers have fewer and larger pollen grains because once an insect has been attracted to the flower and eaten some of the flower pollen grains or nectar, there is quite the high chance that it will accidentally carry some of the pollen grains to another flower of the same species. In this way, it will help in pollination. Okay, by contrast, the wind pollinated plants have to rely on the wind carrying pollen grains to another plant of the same species. The pollen grains have to be very small so that they blow along easily. They have to be very many of them because most will be wasted. So wind pollinated flowers have to create their pollens in large amount, and they should be very, very minute and tiny. After writing this answer, question number 3 answer in your journals, you have to learn that as well. It is also obvious that you can also put your bright ideas here. Right? Now we will do question number 4. If you were growing plants such as cucumber or melon plants in a greenhouse where insects couldn't enter, how would you make sure that all the flowers were pollinated? Okay? Have you written this question with a blue marker neatly in your journals? Okay. Now answer. Guess the answer. What will be the answer? The answer is being practiced for many centuries, and it is in a greenhouse where there are no insects. Cucumber or melon plants often have to be pollinated by hand. Artificial pollination. Okay, a stamen or a small paintbrush bearing pollen is rubbed against the stigmas of the flower so that fertilization can occur. So the farmers also use this technique in pollination and fertilization of their crops. They rub these stamens and they use the paintbrush bearing pollen that is helping it. Okay, you have to learn these all questions, question number 3 and 4, and you also have to learn these basic facts. I am putting here the pictures. The flower contains the plant's reproductive organ. There are 4 main parts to most flowers. They are sepals, petals, stamens, and carpels. The sepals are green and leaf-like. They protect the flower and the bud. The petals, when present, are brightly colored to attract insects. These were the first four basic facts. Now we will learn fifth basic fact, that is the stamens are the male parts of the flower. They each consist of a filament and an anther which contains the pollen grains. The carpels are the female parts of the flower. They consist of stigma, style, and ovary. Pollination is the transfer of pollen from a stamen to a carpel. During self-pollination, pollen is transferred from stamen to stigma of the same plant. During cross-pollination, pollen is transferred from the stamen of one flower to the stigma of a flower on another plant. Okay, these two definitions are to be learned very well. Now, is our insect pollinated plants have brightly colored petals, scented flowers with nectaries, sticky stigmas, and pollen grains which are large and sticky. On the other hand, wind pollinated plants usually have dull green flowers, often without petals, no nectaries, and they have long feathery stigmas. Okay. Self-pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma of the same flower or another flower of the same plant. The diagrams are shown here and they are showing both types of self-pollination. Okay. Now we will show cross pollination is the transfer of pollen grain from the anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower but of the same species or same kind. Now here in this picture, arrow A and arrow B is showing self pollination and arrow C is showing cross pollination. Okay, keep growing the plants around you. Take care the pollinators. They are not only the birds, they are not only the butterflies, they are not only the insects, they are the mason bees as well. So always help the plants to grow and always take care not only the plants, also the family members who are around you. Take care. Allah Hafiz.